Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine? Not from the cold, but from the feeling that you're being watched. Imagine that feeling in one of the most isolated places on Earth. Today, we journey to the icy remote town of Nome, Alaska, a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurred in the 1990s, giving birth to a legend that still sends shivers through the community. This is the story of the Smiling Man. The 1990s were a harsh time in Nome. Nestled on the edge of the Bering Sea, the town is known for its brutal winters, where blinding blizzards can swallow the world in a sea of white. But during this decade, something far more terrifying than the weather began to stalk the streets. People started to vanish. One by one, residents would walk out into the snow-swept darkness and simply never return. At first, the disappearances were dismissed. In such an unforgiving environment, it's easy to get lost, to succumb to the elements. But the numbers grew, and a disturbing pattern began to emerge. The missing were often alone, walking home late at night. As the community's fear mounted, stories started to surface from those who had narrowly escaped a similar fate. They spoke of a figure, an unnervingly silent presence in the heart of the blizzard. These survivors, their voices trembling, all described the same chilling entity. He was tall, unnaturally so, and his skin was a stark, pale white against the swirling snow. But the most terrifying detail, the one that haunted their every waking thought, was his smile. It was a grin that stretched impossibly wide, a grotesque, fixed expression of malevolence that never faltered. His eyes, they said, were wide open, unblinking, and utterly devoid of emotion. He never said a word, one survivor later recounted, his memories still vivid decades later. He just stood there, in the middle of the road, smiling. It wasn't a happy smile. It was hungry. His grin was just too wide for his face. The figure would simply appear, a silent sentinel in the storm, and follow. It wouldn't run. It would just walk, maintaining a steady, relentless pace, its horrifying smile fixed on its target. Imagine the sheer terror. You're walking home, the snow muffling every sound, the wind howling in your ears. You glance over your shoulder and see him, a tall, pale man, smiling that impossible smile. You quicken your pace, your heart hammering against your ribs. You look back again. He's closer. He hasn't sped up, yet he's closing the distance. Panic sets in. You break into a desperate sprint, slipping and sliding on the ice, not daring to look back again, praying you reach the safety of your front door. For some, that prayer was answered. They would burst into their homes, slam the door, and collapse, gasping for breath. But when they gathered the courage to look out the window, the street would be empty. The figure would be gone, as if swallowed by the snow. The only evidence of the encounter was the pounding in their chest and a newfound, paralyzing fear of the dark. But for many others, there was no escape. The disappearances continued. People would leave a friend's house or a local bar, a short walk from their own home, and vanish without a trace. Their last footsteps would be found in the fresh snow, leading down an empty street, before abruptly stopping, as if they were simply plucked from the earth. There were no signs of a struggle, no cries for help, nothing, just silence and the endlessly falling snow. The local police were stumped. The community was in a state of quiet panic. A local legend was born from this terror. A warning passed in hushed tones. If you're out late and see the Smiling Man, never, ever walk home alone. Don't make eye contact. Look away, turn around, and pray. He doesn't decide to follow you. The belief was that acknowledging him, showing fear, was an invitation. The situation became so dire that the FBI was eventually called in to investigate. They looked into the cases, profiled the victims, and scoured the unforgiving Alaskan wilderness for any clue, any body, any answer. They explored every rational explanation. Was it a single, cunning predator using the blizzards as cover? Was it a series of unrelated, tragic accidents? Or was it something else? Something that defied logical explanation. Despite the full force of federal law enforcement, the investigation hit a wall. No suspects were ever named. No bodies were recovered. The cases grew cold, buried under years of fresh snowfall and fading memories. The official files remain open, a collection of unsolved mysteries that leave more questions than answers. Who are these missing people? And what really happened to them on those lonely, frozen nights? The town of Nome tried to move on. Life has a way of continuing, even in the face of such profound mystery and loss. But the legend of the Smiling Man never truly left. It became a part of the town's folklore, a ghost story whispered to children to keep them indoors after dark. For the older residents, however, it's more than just a story. It's a memory of a time when fear had a pale, unblinking, smiling face. Even today, on the darkest, snowiest nights in Nome, some residents will swear they catch a glimpse of a tall figure standing at the edge of the streetlight, just beyond the range of clear vision. Is it just a trick of the light? A figment of an overactive imagination, fueled by a local legend? Or is the Smiling Man still out there, walking silently through the blizzards, his gruesome grin stretching in the darkness, waiting for his next victim? The disappearances remain officially unsolved, a chilling footnote in the history of this remote Alaskan town. The Smiling Man's eerie grin, whether real or imagined, is forever etched into the nightmares of Nome's residents, a terrifying reminder of the unknown horrors that can lurk within the whitest of snowstorms. The truth, like the victims themselves, seems to have been swallowed by the vast, cold Alaskan wilderness. Picture this: a quiet suburban house in 1950s Missouri. The streetlights cast long, dancing shadows across the neatly manicured lawns. Inside, a teenage girl has just settled in for a night of babysitting. The parents have just waved goodbye, their car's taillights disappearing down the street. The house is silent, except for the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the soft, rhythmic breathing of the two children sleeping soundly upstairs. It's a scene of perfect, almost cliché, domestic peace. But as we all know, the most terrifying stories often begin in the most ordinary of places. The phone rings, its shrill sound cutting through the stillness like a knife. The babysitter, let's call her Janet, picks it up. "Hello," she says, expecting a friend or perhaps the parents calling to check in. But the voice on the other end is not one she recognizes. It's low, raspy, and chillingly devoid of any human warmth. "Have you checked the children?" it asks. Just that. No introduction, no explanation, just a cold, unsettling question hanging in the air. Janet's heart gives a little flutter of unease, but she quickly dismisses it. It's probably just a prank call. Some kids from her school with a twisted sense of humor. "Very funny," she mutters, hanging up the phone. She tries to shrug it off, turning her attention to the black and white television flickering in the corner of the living room. The glow of the screen casts an eerie light on her face as she tries to lose herself in the comedy show playing. But the silence of the house feels different now. It feels heavier, charged with an unspoken tension. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside the window, seems amplified, making her jump. The image of the two innocent children sleeping upstairs keeps flashing in her mind. Should she go check on them? No, she tells herself. That's what the caller wants. It's just a game. 20 minutes later, the phone rings again, the same jarring, piercing sound. Her hand hesitates over the receiver. Part of her wants to ignore it, to let it ring until the caller gives up. But another part, a morbid curiosity mixed with a growing sense of dread, compels her to answer. She lifts the receiver slowly, her palms slick with sweat. "Hello," she whispers. "So whispers?" the semi-cold inhuman voice replies. But this time there's an edge of impatience to it, a sinister tone that makes the hairs on her arms stand on end. "Why haven't you checked the children?" The question isn't just a question anymore. It's a command, a threat. The prank theory is starting to crumble, replaced by a cold, hard knot of fear in her stomach. Who is this person? How do they know she's babysitting? How do they know there are children in the house? The anonymity of the voice is what's most terrifying. It could be anyone. Now, real panic begins to set in. This isn't a joke. Her mind races through a dozen horrifying scenarios. She locks the front and back doors, her hands trembling so much she can barely turn the keys. She peeks through the curtains, her eyes scanning the dark street for any sign of a parked car or a lurking figure. But there's nothing, just an empty street, bathed in the pale moonlight. The normality of the scene outside is a stark, terrifying contrast to the chaos unfolding inside her head. The house, which felt so cozy and safe just an hour ago, now feels like a trap. Every shadow seems to hold a hidden threat, every corner a potential hiding place. She considers calling her parents or a friend, but what would she say? A creepy voice on the phone is telling me to check the children. They'd think she was overreacting, being a dramatic teenager, but the fear is real. It's visceral, and it's consuming her. The phone rings a third time. This time, she almost screams. She stares at the black plastic object on the table as if it were a venomous snake. She can't answer it. She won't. But she also can't stand the incessant ringing. It feels like a countdown. With a shaking hand, she finally snatches the receiver. Before she can say a word, the voice speaks, colder and more menacing than before. "I'm going to come for them if you don't check. That's it." The line goes dead. The prank is over. This is something else entirely. This is real. This is happening. Janet drops the phone, a choked sob escaping her lips. She finally understands that she's not just the target of a sick joke. She's a pawn in a terrifying game. And the children upstairs are the prize. Her protective instincts kick in, overriding her fear. She has to do something. She has to protect those kids. Her first rational thought is to call for help. Trembling, she dials the police operator. Her voice is a frantic whisper as she tries to explain the situation, the repeated calls, the menacing voice, the terrifying threat. She expects skepticism, perhaps a calm but dismissive voice telling her to stay calm and that they'll send a car to patrol the area. But the operator's response is anything but calm. There's an urgency in his voice that chills her to the bone. "We're tracing the call right now. Just stay on the line with me, ma'am." Keep him talking if he calls back. But Janet explains that the caller hangs up immediately. A few agonizing seconds of silence pass on the other end of the line, filled only with the faint sound of official-sounding chatter in the background. Then, the operator's voice returns, and the words he speaks will haunt her for the rest of her life. He doesn't shout, he doesn't panic, but his tone is grave and urgent. "Ma'am, get out of the house. Get out right now." The call is coming from inside the house. The world stops. The operator's words echo in the silent room. A death sentence delivered over the phone. The call is coming from inside the house. It's not someone miles away. It's not a prankster down the street. The person making these calls is here, in this house, with her, with the children. The realization hits her like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. Every fear she had, every paranoid thought, was an understatement. The monster wasn't outside trying to get in. It was already inside, breathing the same air, walking the same floors. Where? An upstairs extension phone. The basement. How long had he been here? Was he watching her right now? The thought is so paralyzing, she can barely move. The operator is still on the line, yelling at her to run, but his voice sounds distant, muffled by the roaring in her ears. Adrenaline, pure and potent, surges through her veins. The instinct for survival takes over. She has two choices: run out the front door and save herself, or go upstairs and get the children. For a fleeting, selfish moment, she thinks of her own safety. But then the image of those two small, defenseless children asleep in their beds floods her mind. She can't leave them. She just can't. With a surge of courage she didn't know she possessed, she drops the phone and sprints towards the staircase. Her feet barely touch the steps as she flies up them, her heart hammering against her ribs like a drum. She bursts into the children's bedroom, her eyes wild with terror. And there they are. Safe. Sound asleep. Completely oblivious to the horror that has been unfolding just one floor below them. Relief washes over her, so intense it almost makes her knees buckle. They're okay. But the relief is short. He's still in the house. The police are on their way, but they're not here yet. She has to get the children out. She scoops up the smaller child in her arms and gently but urgently shakes the older one awake. "We have to go," she whispers, trying to keep the terror out of her voice. "It's a game. We're going to run outside." The children, groggy and confused, don't argue. She hurts them out of the room and down the stairs, her eyes darting into every dark corner, expecting a figure to leap out at any moment. They burst out the front door into the cold night air just as the wail of sirens grows louder, piercing the quiet of the suburban street. Police cars screech to a halt, their flashing lights painting the house in frantic strokes of red and blue. She's safe. The children are safe. The police swarmed the house, their weapons drawn. Janet, wrapped in a blanket on the lawn with the children, watches in a daze. After a thorough search of the main floors and the basement turns up nothing, they move to the attic. One of the officers pulls down the ladder and cautiously climbs up, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. A moment later, a cold stone, they found him. The intruder was a silent shadow, a man who had been hiding in the attic the entire time. He had been using an extension phone up there, watching Janet through a vent in the ceiling, toying with her, feeding on her fear. He never intended to harm the children. His twisted game was all about psychological terror. He had been watching them all night, a silent, unseen presence in their safe haven. The story became a local legend, a chilling cautionary tale passed down from one generation of babysitters to the next. It serves as a stark reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't the ones lurking in the dark outside, but the ones that are already inside, closer than we could ever imagine. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales that will keep you up at night, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Stay safe out there.